appreciate you taking your time out and speaking to us at ET. Now, let me first begin by talking about a big relief today finally coming in for India Inc. Even as the Prime Minister has extended the lockdown by about 19 more days, MHA today has allowed a whole host of industries from agro-processing to hardware to construction to start functioning from the 20th onwards. It's a good first step, but given the state of the lockdown, a lot of industries still believe it's going to be tough in terms of material, and of course the big concern for getting their workers back as well, because a lot of workers have gone back to their their villages, their native places. How do you see the moves now from India Inc.? How tough is it going to be in stage 2 of the lockdown?
Well, I mean, as you said yourself, Ruchi, this is a major step forward. I mean, and for agriculture, for example, all operations from farm to fork have now been permitted, to go ahead, and this labor is already there, as it were. So for agriculture, there is no concern. The marketing, the APMC, the procurement, the warehouses, the cold storage, all of that is put in place now. As far as the manufacturing side is concerned, for the sectors which are now allowed, my own hunch is that the great majority of the labor is in place already. Thankfully, as you know, only a very small handful of workers were able to, as it were, go back to their villages. So I think, and those who had left will of course not be able to come back until the 3rd of May. But I think most of the industries that I know of, and especially the ones that are now permitted here, have their workers in place, and they will now just get them back, as it were, on dedicated transport, which is required for the moment, and work at 50% capacity, just to maintain the safe distance. So I think, I don't see India Inc. now struggling too much in the sectors that have been permitted to be opened up. Now, in the other sectors, of course, they will continue to be under lockdown, as it were, until the 3rd of May. But as you said yourself, the oil and refinery and the gas and pharmaceuticals and IT hardware and several others have now been permitted to be open. So I think that's it's a good staggered first step, and we will see economic activity now, coming up in these sectors, starting the 20th.
Sir, but normalcy in a large way will also depend on our ability to be able to contain the virus. Given the fact that we're way past the 10,000 mark in terms of the number of infections, the lockdown, in terms of for industry also is conditional. There are penal provisions also in place. District administration, the state governments will continue to have the last word. How far will today's guidelines go in reducing the general distress for India Inc.?
I mean, I don't I'm not very clear on what general distress implies here. But the fact is that all the industries which are outside the municipal limits, agro-processing included, and pharmaceuticals, and all the rest that we just talked about, they can now start their operations. In terms of, I think what you're probably referring to are the service sector industry, which is
exactly,
and the transport and the entertainment and the malls and the trading, etc. Now those, just in order to keep a control over the spread of the virus, we have to keep them locked down, to that extent, and so they will continue to experience complete revenue loss for this period, because as I've said before, these are services which are consumed on the very day, so that it's not as if you don't consume them today, you can postpone them for a later date. Now, for these industries, I'm hoping that the stimulus package, which is in the making, will provide some relief in terms of sharing their costs, their fixed costs, which include, the wage cost to a certain extent. So that will. So there are two sets of industries here. One which have been allowed to operate now, in which I think that will remove their distress, but which the others which are not, and there I think to the best of my knowledge, they will be taken care of in the package that is forthcoming.
Right. It's interesting, sir, that you referred about the package as well, which was supposed to be, my next question to you. But before I go across to that, the industry has been now allowed to function in a staggered way. We're still waiting to hear about what happens to the services sector as well. But in terms of the economic impact is something that, we have to see what happens because many are comparing this great lockdown to what we saw during the Great Depression as well. It's being compared to that. The IMF talked about it yesterday. IMF expects India to grow at 1.9% from Fitch to Goldman Sachs to Barclays. Now, in fact, saying that by calendar year 2020, India's growth is going to be 0%. What's the government's own assessment of the economic impact of this great lockdown? We're now 21 days past, 19 more days to go.
Yeah, Ruchi, we have in the government's sort of thought through this, and sort of we feel that it's very premature to make an assessment of this time at this point of time, because this will, as you can well realize, what the actual economic impact, which is of course going to be negative, there is no denying that, will depend upon the severity, the spread, and the length of the virus infection as we go forward. So at this stage, I think it's a bit premature. I think it's also very brave of those some of these forecasters to already talk about a 0% rate of growth of GDP. I think we are not that brave, and I think they will be wrong. When it comes down, because I see economic activity in India picking up quite strongly after the lockdown is lifted, and I think the April to June quarter will of course be impacted significantly and negatively because we've lost a whole month of economic activity across. But again here, let me qualify that by saying that our Rabi harvest, which is going to be a major input of the agriculture side, is not going to be impacted negatively, because from from some time ago, about 10 days ago, or about maybe 2 weeks ago, it was certified as an essential service, and therefore, so agriculture is not going to be impacted very badly. So that's that. Now, for the manufacturing and services, within manufacturing, the essential goods will continue. So yes, the quarter will be impacted, but starting July onwards, I expect a strong recovery in this country, because there is a huge demand waiting to be met. And India being dependent a lot, consumption-driven economy, I think we will see this economic recovery happening. And to that extent, the third and the fourth quarter, in fact, the second to the fourth quarter of fiscal 21, July onwards, I think we'll see positive rates of growth. I can't say how much. And therefore, I am not at all agreeing with those who are talking about a negative or a zero rate of growth. Yes, we will be impacted, but of course, it is too premature, and I think some of the Cassandras will be proven wrong when the recovery starts.
We still can't say, the kind of impact that it will have on the Indian economy. But sir, the India Inc. industry has been crying hoarse for help. The package should have come for India Inc. sooner than later. We still haven't heard from the government on that. There was one package for the poor and BPL families for their welfare. After that, we saw some moves by the RBI as well, but we still haven't heard the nature of, what the package for India Inc. will look like, how much fiscal support could come in, what kind of relief could come in for MSMEs. How soon can we hear on that, sir?
Well, I hope very soon, and I think that the government is very cognizant of it. The government is seized of the matter, and I know that there have been discussions at several levels on this. So I think the package is in the making, and you will hear from it. You hear about it, and I hope sooner than later. And and I think what's clear is, of course, that there is a package, and I think that if there is a delay, this is just simply because the complexity of a country like India, where we have such diverse situations across all our states. Then we also have the fact that there is such a large number of MSMEs and those employed in the unorganized sector. How does one reach, to them? The fact there is also of, to take care of, all those who need the credit, access to credit by the NBFCs and so on. So I think, it's but also the fact that we have, unlike the US or Japan or, we have a real resource constraint. I mean, we are not, we don't have the luxury of, just throwing unlimited amounts of money. So we have to determine, where the money is going to be best allocated and used. So all of that is, taking the little time that it is, but I'm sure this is coming. And India Inc., by the way, has been consulted quite significantly. The government has engaged with India Inc. in a very, consistent and, and continuous manner. So I'm sure, their demands will be considered, and and the issues that they've raised will be addressed.
So while the Prime Minister has appealed to India Inc. to be compassionate during these times, India Inc. is waiting to hear from the government as well on the package. But one cannot ignore the fact that India Inc. is using COVID-19 as an opportunity for their capex, rationalize the cost. There's a big fear of job losses as well. What's going to be your message to India Inc.? And is this really going to become a new normal for India Inc. as well? Because at the end of the day, you will see big companies protecting their margins, and this is going to come at the cost of common people, of workers, of employees.
I think India Inc. will do very well to adhere to Honorable Prime Minister's request for them at this time to be compassionate. And the fact is that I know of many companies, the Tatas and the Mahindras and the others have announced that they will not let go of any of their workers, and they will pay their salaries, etc. I think is also the time when I know of many small companies, medium-sized companies who are also not letting go of their workers, and are dipping into their reserves to be able to pay them, because I think it is important to maintain, as it were, the social capital of the companies, whereby we don't just let go of the workers that we've trained, etc. So I think it's useful at this time to recognize that this is a very special time. This is a very special situation, and we all have to share this. We all have to share this and make sure that those who are the most vulnerable, which is the workers, and especially those who are in the organized sector, do not suffer. The government is doing its bit. The state governments are doing their bit, and making sure that these governments get their workers get their sustenance. And I think it's as the Prime Minister said, a degree of compassion and understanding by the India Inc. I think is very well worth it, and should be forthcoming.
While many companies may not let go of their employees, the fact is that even if salaries are cut, this is going to have a massive impact on demand, on consumption. And in light of that, I do understand that there were a lot of talks within the government as well on some kind of a wage support being provided. Is there any sort of a consensus on wage support? Because that would be imperative at a point like this.
Well, I mean, I heard you. You said it's imperative, and well, let's see. But the point, I think, let me only say at this time that all these issues, both on the demand side and on the supply side, are under the active consideration of the government. And the government recognizes that you have a situation where you have both a demand and a supply shock together, and therefore you need to act on both. And as we said earlier, hopefully all of these things will be taken care of. When we get to the next step. The most important thing you must remember is still to prevent loss of human life. It is still to make sure that this lockdown that we have come out, that we've started, where the Prime Minister has led from the front and has actually preempted in some sense the events will have to be enforced, so that we get the best results, as it were, at this time, in terms of the minimum lives lost and minimum fatalities. So I think the focus has to be there. And India Inc.'s requirements and the economy's requirements will, of course, be taken care of in due course.
So in terms of the 2021, but just two more questions. In terms of the 2021 budget, everybody is saying, in fact, experts are now saying that the whole budget is in jeopardy. Expenditure demands have gone up considerably due to the COVID-19 spends. The central government has assured the states that they will be meeting most part of the health expenditure. Having said that, our tax revenues are down, our divestment plan is absolutely grounded. Is it really a time for the government to review the fiscal roadmap as well going forward?
I'm sure it is, because and the FRBM Act does permit a escape clause in terms of emergencies like this, in terms of special circumstances like this. So I think and I am also sure that the rating agencies will also take into consideration that the special circumstances that not just us but the whole world is in. I mean, I think this is the first time ever that I've heard the chief economist of the IMF, and IMF, has been always a fiscal hawk. The chief economist, Dr. Gita Gopinath, has said very clearly that this is not the time, to look at, fiscal rules and fiscal prudence, and this might be well the time to even, get the governments to monetize their debt, because that's what is required. And I think the rating agencies will be very cognizant of the fact that it is not fiscal prudence, but the growth, but which is more important than going forward. So I think there's a worldwide consensus today from everywhere, that fiscal rules have to be relooked at this particular time in a situation which is as bad, if not worse, than which is much worse than the 2008 crisis. And as you said yourself in the beginning, it's pretty much like the Great Depression, which we want to avoid.
Is it, my last question to you, and I know you are getting calls, but is it really time that we will see the RBI looking at direct financing of the government's deficit? Is that something that's the need of the hour now?
Well, I leave it to the RBI, and I think they are very competent in this. But I must say that I appreciate very much the governor's own assurance that the RBI will do what it takes, and that's what he said more than once, to kickstart the economy, to get the economic activity back on track. And I'm sure, therefore, that that is what will happen, and they will have in front of them all the different options, and I'm sure they'll decide, wisely on how to kickstart this economy.
All right. On that note, sir, appreciate you taking your time out and speaking to us at ET now, sir.
Thanks, Ruchi. Thank you so much.